Hey guys, so hopefully you just did awesome on your quiz, or for those of you who are watching at home, I hope you're doing awesome. But I'm just going to go through the front side of the topic 8C through D worksheet. This is us going through proofs involving parallel lines and transversals. So I'm going to go through 1 and 2 with you. If you're in class right now after the quiz, I want you to do these with me, and then I want you to try the back by yourself. I'll put up some answers before you leave today. But I also hope for those of you who are watching at home, this is a good review for you. So if you look at number 1, it says we're given the fact that line L is parallel to line M, and we can confirm that because the arrows here show that our lines are parallel. So the arrows at the end shows that the line goes forever. These extra arrows in the middle are telling us that these are going in the same direction, they're parallel. And they want us to prove that angle 4 is congruent to angle 6. Well, we know that angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles. We already know that. And we know that because they're parallel, these two angles are going to be congruent. We've talked about that in topic 7. But here's the thing. Yes, we already know that, but the purpose of this proof is to show someone that relationship, that these are congruent, is true. And because of that, we can't use the alternate interior angles theorem because we're trying to prove it. So our purpose here is to prove the alternate interior angles theorem. And we've talked in class about how postulates are things that we accept as true without proof, and theorems are things we have to prove to be true. So we're actually showing why this is true. We're proving this theorem. But that means that in the body of our proof, we can only use postulates and theorems that we've used in previous units, since we're proving one of the theorems from this unit. So things that we could use would be the linear pair postulate. It's a postulate. We could use the corresponding angles postulate. It's a postulate. And the vertical angles theorem's okay as well, since we learned about that last unit. But they've given us our statements. We need to justify our with reasons. So it says L is parallel to M. That's because that's our given information. They had to tell us that was true. We can't just assume that. Now it says angle 2 is congruent to angle 6. So if I look up in the picture, here's angle 2, here's angle 6. Well, they're corresponding angles. They're both in the same spot in the intersection. They're in the top right both times. Well, we know that corresponding angles are congruent if our lines are parallel because of the corresponding angles postulate. And we can use it because it's a postulate, something we accept as true without proof. It's one of our building blocks. Remember in class we talked about how red, green, and blue are the building blocks for all other colors. They're our postulates. We have to start with something, but we can use those building blocks, postulates, or those 3 colors to build all the other colors or all the other theorems. So postulate, that's one of our building blocks. Okay, angle 4 is congruent to angle 2. Well, I look up in my picture, I know this relationship. These are vertical angles. It's from last unit, so I can use the vertical angles theorem. Fantastic. Okay, well, I look here, I see angle 4 and angle 6. We know that's true, but we need to prove that it's true. So I can't use the alternate interior angles theorem, but what I can do is look up at my previous statements and notice, okay, I know that angle 2 is congruent to angle 6, but angle 2 is also congruent to angle 4. That's our transitive property. Since 2 was the same as 4, and 2 is the same as 6, we know that these two also have to be the same. So that's my transitive property of, there's a congruent sign, so it's a property of congruence. Okay, so let's look at our second proof now, and you can pause if you need to write any of that down. Let's look at our second proof. It says, complete the proof given the image to the right, so this is what we're given, prove that the measure of angle 2 equals 103 degrees. I should put a little degree sign in there. Okay, well, let's see what it said so far. It says A is parallel to B and M is parallel to N. Even though we don't have a little given statement right here, we were given the picture, and in the picture, the arrows show that this pair of lines is parallel, this pair of lines is parallel, so that's given information. Our final goal is to prove that angle 2 has a measure of 103 degrees. Those are pretty spread out. That's not one of the relationships we already have. So all of our postulates and theorems are on the table. So let's see what it says next. It says angle 1 is congruent to the angle that measures 103. So this angle and this angle are congruent. Well, yeah, that's true. They're corresponding angles. And since the lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. So that's the corresponding angles postulate. Okay, now it says definition of congruent angles. So Step 2 says angle 1 is congruent to the angle that measures 103 degrees. Well, if something's congruent, it means their size is the same. In this case, their angle measures are the same. So we can go from saying angle 1 is congruent to this angle to the measure of angle 1 is 103 degrees. We went from angles being congruent to their measures being equal. Okay, now it says angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Let's look at our picture. Angle 1 and angle 2 are alternate exterior angles, so we can use the alternate exterior angles theorem. We have definition of congruent angles again. Well, we have our angles are congruent, so we can say that their measures are equal. Great. Okay, they told us that we're going to use the transitive property, so let's look at above. We need to find something that's used twice and two things are equal or congruent to it. Well, I see the measure of angle 1 equals 103, and the measure of angle 1 also equals the measure of angle 2. And I know that this is the one they want here because it says to prove that the measure of angle 2 equals 103. Here's the measure of angle 2 equals 103. Our last step, our last statement always has to be what we're trying to prove, and there it is. So that was just a really brief me going through these proofs for you guys. Go ahead and finish this up. Try the back of this worksheet, and we'll go over it once everybody's done with the quiz.